Hi everybody, welcome to Unit 2. We'll be talking about ethnicity and race. Before we get started on the podcast though, please pause and answer the following questions. Just take a minute to jot down the answers to these questions. I had you write down your thoughts to these questions because as we learn about other races and ethnicities, we need to have a good understanding of our own. Let's look at how your book defines ethnicity. The characteristics of ethnic groups changes over time. For example, the characteristics of the Asian American ethnicity looks different than it did 40 years ago. Defining a person by their ethnicity is not always that clear cut. In 2006, 22% of the U.S. population identified with two or more national origins. The degree of ethnic identity is determined by recognition and promotion of ethnicity in the family. An adopted child from Korea with a white family and a white last name, will still have the Korean ethnicity ascribed even though no Korean cultural identity exists. Now let's look at race. There is a difference between race and ethnicity, but in the United States are really used interchangeably most of the time. Race is a socio-historical concept that is used to classify individuals based on difference. However, there's so many different ethnic groups who may comprise a racial group and different racial groups that are part of the same ethnicity. For example, you have both white and black races as part of the Hispanic ethnicity. Race can also be very limiting. For example, on forms, people may be asked to check their ethnicity or race. Well, Asian Pacific Islander may be one category. Culturally, though, there's a lot of difference between somebody from Korea and somebody from Hawaii. Racial identity formation takes place over time and through a series of stages. You already know that the U.S. is a very diverse place. Our country is comprised of almost 300 ethnic groups. The indigenous population, 170 American Indian tribes, plus Native Hawaiians account for less than 1.5 of the total population. Current immigrants comprise about 12% of the population, but descendants from immigrants are 86.5% of the population. So I would assume that the majority of you in this class are descendants of immigrants. Immigration is a hot topic right now in the U.S., and we have another PowerPoint later in this unit that I want you to view concerning some of the issues, because as a teacher, you most likely will have children of immigrants or who are immigrants themselves that may or may not be legal. But remember, we are charged with educating all children. It does not say educating only the children who are here legally. Now that we've had this short discussion of ethnicity and race, please pause the podcast again and write down your thoughts on the following questions that you see here. Put the first thing that comes to mind and be honest. You are the only one who will read it. Were those hard questions to answer honestly? I'm trying to just get you to think a little bit, because if you understand your own beliefs, you'll be a better teacher for all kids. Here's a definition of prejudice and race. It's important to realize that everyone has prejudices and may have racist thoughts because of their life experiences. I know several of you now are probably disagreeing with me, saying, I'm not racist, I'm not prejudiced, but our experiences do negatively or positively affect our thoughts. Let me give you an example. I grew up in a small town in northeast Missouri, Kirksville, if anybody's heard of it. It's home of Truman State University. Anyway, in my high school class, we only had one Asian student, and he was our valedictorian. So in my mind, all Asians were extremely bright and made good grades. When I became an assistant principal in a school that had a large Hmong population, I expected them all to do well in school, but that wasn't the case. Many of them really struggled, and I had to recheck my thinking. Another example that I want you to think about is how you react now when you're getting on an airplane and you see a Middle Eastern man. Does it make you a little nervous? Just think about that. I think the U.S. still has a ways to go in providing a non-racist society, but I also think we have made a lot of progress. You all know about Brown versus Board of Education, so just to recap, the Supreme Court decision in Brown was a result of several class action suits. The court determined that if a state provides free education, a property right of an education is established, separate schools are inherently unequal. Although the effects were not immediate, the Brown decision began the desegregation of schools. Then in 1964, the Civil Rights Act banned discriminations in our schools, in public areas, and in employment. It did take some time for that change to occur. Also, in 1972, Title IX came about, which provided equal access in all areas of education to females. And finally, on the screen, we see Law versus Nichols, and that deals with our English language learners and making sure that they are not discriminated against. And it said that students must be taught English to be successful, and they can't just sit in the classroom and have the same books and the same curriculum and the same teachers and be expected to learn, but you have to actively teach them English. So we really have had a lot of success, but we still do have segregation in our schools today and in our society. Only 14% of white students attend multiracial schools, in which 3 or more racial groups are present. Black students today are the most likely group to attend virtually all non-white schools, where poverty, limited resources, and other problems are widespread. This is normally caused by de facto segregation, which is unintentional segregation caused by natural housing patterns. If it was de jure segregation, that would be intentional segregation caused by drawing boundary lines to prevent students from different races of attending the same schools, and then school districts, if that's the case, can be court-ordered to desegregate. More of what happens in our schools is institutional racism. This racism is usually unintentional. It's just the way things have always been done. After the PowerPoint, please read the Berkeley article to see if you think this is an example of institutional racism. Then answer the questions on the forum. So how do we close the achievement gap between groups? There is a considerable disparity between achievement by students of color, particularly poor students, and the majority group achievement. Low-income students are more likely to have low-level curriculum and low performance standards. Students of color in poor communities have less experience, less qualified teachers, and less AP advanced classes, which penalizes those good students. So what can you do as a beginning teacher? I would start by suggesting to have clear objectives and to focus on academics. Provide extra instruction to students when they need it. Make sure your instruction is engaging and connected to their lives. Have consistently high expectations, have good classroom management, and have the attitude that and the belief that all children really can learn, but realize that you may have to give more support for all to be successful. And above all, know that you as a teacher make the biggest difference in the classroom. More than the books, more than the building, it's you as a teacher. Good teaching matters more than anything else. I hope you enjoyed this short PowerPoint on ethnicity and race, and hopefully thinking about a few things. Make sure that you follow the agenda and complete all the rest of the activity. Let me know if you have any questions, and thank you so much for listening. Have a great rest of the day.